Hey everyone, CJ Maurer here back with another podcast episode, but proud to say that this is the inaugural episode of The Fling. For anybody who's following along, you know that when COVID hit and we were all resigned to spending lots of time in our home, I knew that I've always wanted to start a podcast, and now there would really be no better time. So I just started doing it to have fun, to see if I like it. Turns out I do like it, and it's fun, and it's connected me with a lot of people the way you'll see in a second when we start talking with Emily. I'm going to give this a little bit more of an introduction than I normally would. But it's important because I encourage a lot of people to put themselves out there, create content, and if no other reason than for the experimentation of it. And so I didn't want to wait until I came up with a name or a strategy or anything else to just start doing it. And so I still really like it. And it finally hit me that, what do you call something that you love doing for no other reason than it's fun and you don't really know or care how it's going to end up? And so nothing's changed with this podcast except the name. It is now called The Fling.
Yay.
Because thank you. Yes. So here we are. We have my inaugural guest of The Fling. This will go down in the record books, on my Wikipedia page someday. So I have Emmily Bowman here. Emmily Bowman is with Braid Babes, and I can't wait to talk to her about that. So before I get started, I just want to say that Emily and I got connected a handful of years ago from a mutual friend, and at the time she was working for a different company, and we were talking about marketing, we were talking about entrepreneurship, we were talking about a whole bunch of things, and she was somebody who was just really passionate about a lot of things and really eager to make her mark on the world. And I knew she was going to do something. I didn't know what she was going to do. I am certainly not the target market for Braid Babes, but I really admire everything that she's done and her unique path of entrepreneurship and really influencing people. So super excited to have this conversation and dive in a little bit more. First of all, Emily, how are you?
Good. Thank you for the intro. Definitely doing good. What's really funny, I think you actually introduced me to our friend now, Lauren,
Yep.
which is so funny. That makes you a huge part of my story because Lauren then introduced me to Dave, and then that's how I left my full-time job. So like you're actually such a big part of my story.
That's funny. Yes. So Lauren Melenda, who is a partner at Riveter Design, she is really a professional contact who's become a friend. But we met in professional settings, and she's just a stand-up dude who I introduce as many people as I can to her, and she's in some instances returned the favor as well. So that's really cool. And Mongoose, actually, when you mentioned Dave, my wife works for that company now.
Oh wow,
So
I didn't even know
yeah,
that.
yeah, it was before you, because I remember walking in there one time when I was helping them figure out CRM and some other things related to marketing. Gosh, this would have been probably 2 years ago, and I saw you there, and I was like, "What are you doing here?"
Yep, yep,
But
in
that
winter of 2018.
Yep, yep. So yeah, so it's funny how, I mean, but that's Buffalo, right? Like
Yeah, it
nobody's
is.
more than 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
Yep, yep, it's
So
crazy.
so why don't you rewind back to whenever we met? It must have been 2017 then.
Yeah, it
So
was it was 2018, mid
okay,
to early 2018.
okay, cold weather time, more than
Yeah.
2 years ago. So yeah, why don't you rewind back to that time? You don't have to share every single detail, but why don't you talk about like kind of what your headspace was in terms of you trying to figure out what you want to do with your career and your life as something that everybody can relate to, no matter how old they are, what stage they are, and how you kind of eventually got here. And then we'll talk about Braid Babes as well.
Totally. So, uh, I found myself in a day job in analytics, and I got really good at it, and I got really good at having an office job, and I worked my way up. I did not go into management, but I was doing really well. In my mom's eyes, I had made it. My mom was like, "You did it. You did it way faster than I ever did it. I can't believe you did it." But I still was feeling really unfulfilled. I just kind of always thought I would do something really cool with my life, and, going to the same 9 to 5 job every day, and then, only like going tailgating on the weekend, or like going out to a bar with friends. Like, it's fun, but I just felt like there was so much more. And I always thought I would do so much more. So I was feeling a little bummed. Um, with that, I ended up finding my way to a career coach, and they had this whole process, but the main portion of the process that made a big difference was taking coffees with people that were in a position that I thought I wanted to be in. At the time, I was like, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed a few things about marketing, and so I picked some people in marketing, which led me to CJ. I reached out and said, "Hey, like, I know you don't really know me, but if you'd be down to have a coffee, I'd like to just hear about your path in your life." And that's what we did. You told me, about everything, how you got to where you were, what you were working on, what your life was like. Um, I did about I did about 16 of those coffees, and what's really cool is a lot of those connections I still end up passing today, or working with them in some aspect today. So it's been really fun. Um, but meeting you, CJ, was really cool because, like I said, you introduced me to Lauren, and Lauren's one of those like ultimate connectors. So of course
Yes.
she then introduced me to who she thought I should meet with. One was Dave, and Dave was like, "You seem like a smart cookie. I don't really know where you fit on the team, but I want you involved. I want you here." And so he brought me on as a contractor. And so I left my full time, well paying job for a contract position at Mongoose. Um, that was like a really scary decision. I remember like drawing out a decision tree, and, you know, like leaving my benefits, leaving just, the guaranteed hours, everything. It was really scary. It's really funny how things worked out. So, right in my last 2 weeks at my prior company, I picked up a braid book and thought, hey, like, I'm kind of bored. Why don't I like learn how to braid? I didn't actually open the book. I found the author on Instagram. It was like as I was falling asleep, and the the author, she has a huge Instagram, and it said in her stories in 5 days she was starting a braid challenge. And I was like, oh, that'd be fun. So for 30 days, I did a different braid every day. And so when I started working at Mongoose, I was coming into work every day with a different braid in my hair. And Dave, the owner, it's kind of funny. He would just kind of be like, oh, cool braid. Like, but it was so obvious I was coming in with these like intricate braids every day, some wild, some classy, some really out there braids. Um, and I remember sitting next to Dave, the owner, at his desk, and I was like, I don't know, Dave. I'm gonna have a business one day. It's it's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be something. And I'm sure a lot of people have said that to him, with him being, such a successful entrepreneur. So he was just kind of like, yeah, okay, cool. And what's cool is him and I have talked a few times now, and I'm like, do you remember when I told you that I wanted to have a business?
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So what was cool of that contract position was so flexible that then I started taking braid appointments, and working less hours for Dave. And then eventually I did more braid hours and less contract hours.
So how did it start, right? So you read this braid book, you see that the author was just starting in 5 days. They were going to be starting a braid challenge where every day for 30 days they're doing a brand new braid. And I actually remember when you were doing this. I probably, if I didn't like see it on social media, and I was just like working in your office, honestly, I probably wouldn't have even have noticed. Well, maybe I would have noticed.
I think
I'm not the most
I think
observant of people, but
I think everyone noticed my prior boss, as I was working my last 2 weeks. I had this one, it had two buns on top, and he stopped and he was like, mid talking, he's like, I can't take you seriously with your hair like that. And like
it's
it
funny.
was a young company culture, so like it was more funny than rude, but it was it was definitely noticeable.
Okay, so maybe I would. I mean, I'm not the most observant person, but I'm also I don't know, not the lead. Okay, I'll take you at your word. So forget that. You're posting it on social media, and so where do you go from like, oh, I'm just this person who quit her job and started contracting for another company who happens to, in my personal life, right, be doing a braid challenge where I'm doing a different braid every day for a month. How does it go from that to booking appointments? Like, what was the
Yeah.
first thing? Did somebody be like, oh my god, like, can you do that for me? Like, how did it start?
Yeah, so there's a few like key turning points. So one was that August I went on a camping trip, and every one of my friends lined up, there was 10 of them, for a braid. And so then that's when I was like, they're literally just sitting there for like an hour and a half just waiting to get their braid. And I was like, sorry, my roommate's here.
That's fine.
There's probably actually gonna be a few people in and out because this is the Braid Babe headquarters. So
Nice, nice.
uh so at this camping trip, my favorite place in the world, Belmont, they all lined up, and I just was kind of like, this is something. Like that's really when I realized like this is more than just like, hey, I'm just learning how to braid my hair because I'm sick of having it in a ponytail or down every single day. Because I I mean, I'm kind of a girly girl, but like I'm not the kind of girly girl that's like doing full makeup, full hair. I didn't know how to do my hair. I didn't know how to do my makeup. Um, so it really was just to like try different styles. Um, so that day I changed my Instagram to Buffalo Braid Babe. Uh, and that was like one of the key turning points of where I was like, okay, this is going from like me just having some fun to like maybe it's gonna be
Yeah.
something bigger. I didn't know what it would be, if maybe I was just gonna like be an influencer, because there's a good amount of braid influencers. They just braid their hair and take pictures and promote products and stuff. Um, then like a week later, Blush Boutique called me up and asked me to
Is that
braid
the
at
place
their.
on Elmwood, the clothing store?
Yeah. She's not on Elmwood anymore, but she has 3 locations: Williamsville, East Aurora, maybe Orchard Park. Yeah, Orchard
Okay.
Park. So she asked me to braid at the grand opening in East Aurora, and that was actually going to be my very first time ever braiding any strangers. I had never braided someone I hadn't met before. So I was really nervous. I don't think I even slept the night before. And it's so funny to look back on those moments. Like, I remember people came up, they wanted a braid. I had a good turnout, like 25 people showed up for braids. And I was just kind of like, oh, that braid doesn't look that great. Do you mind if I redo it? Because like I've never braided a stranger before. Like everyone has different hair. It was so wild. But from that braid bar, 2 people there that I braided asked me to braid their hair the next weekend for a wedding they were attending. And so I was like, sure, for $35, I'll braid your hair. And then I just put in my bio, DM me for a braid appointment. And sure enough, people started DMing me for braid appointments. It's just really the power of Instagram.
Yeah, it's definitely the power of Instagram. I think it's just also a power of ownership. I years ago I was following this guy. He was a blogger, a writer. He wrote some books, and one of the things that he kept saying is like how do you become like a professional writer? And I don't remember exactly the way he said it, but his point was you become a writer by calling yourself one. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Right. And so
Yeah.
his larger point was like it's a mindset shift, right? Nobody is going to like come out of the woodwork and anoint you a professional braider or a writer or fill in the blank. And so it's on yourself to become that. And yeah, you need to do the work and acquire the skills and all of those other things. But especially now, if you can do that and own it, right? We have the tools and communication channels to put ourselves out there. The barriers to entry are significantly lower. Imagine if you were trying to put the word out there 30 years ago as a braider. I don't know. What do you call yourself?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
braider.
right. So 30 years ago, what would you do? Your options, I mean,
Like the
would,
newspaper, the
yeah, would
classic
you
ad.
take an ad out in the newspaper or TV
Yeah.
ads or, just start knocking on doors? Like, it's just so much easier now. The barriers to entry have been significant. People can book a time. I'm on your website right now. It says Braid Babes, book now. You know what I
Yes,
mean? There's a
it's
little chat
amazing.
bot that's saying, "Hey, babe, send us any questions here." So it's just it is a testament to Instagram, but I think it's also a testament to just really just technology and like I think we can get hung up, and I certainly have been guilty of this, getting hung up in all the ways that like technology harms our society, because I think it's evident. However, I think sometimes we fail to appreciate what it's really enabling, and it's enabling people like you and me and millions of people throughout the world to take their art, their creativity, and their professionalism to the world and get noticed without having to pay to play or go through a gatekeeper, right? That you know what I mean, they can just put it out there and get discovered, and that to me is like the most exciting thing, and I've been
It
on this
is.
train
It's so
for a number
cool.
of
Like,
years.
yeah, you could just start something today. It really is cool.
So okay, so now talk about the evolution of, so you called yourself the Buffalo Braid Babe, which there's so many like Buffalo centric Instagram accounts now.
Yeah.
There's the Buffalo Lovebirds. There's the Buffalo Food Slut. I don't know. There's a lot, right? And it's cool, right? So you're seeing people probably. I'm sure, like if it hasn't snowballed already, it's going to start snowballing soon. Where people were like, I can make a career out of this thing that I'm into, and I just love that. So I follow those accounts, even if it's not something that I'm supremely interested in. I love seeing people do their thing. So you called yourself the Buffalo Braid Babe. You said DM me for appointments. Approximately where was that? And tell me about how you went from there to where you are now and what Braid Babes is now. Because I
Yeah.
know it's a
So
lot more than a passion. I know that like this is a thriving business.
right, right. So uh the braid bar was about it was like end of October, and so between October and January 1st, it was that DM for appointment, and it was a lot of learning. The first few appointments were in my apartment, and then I was like, this is kind of weird. You know what? I'll just come to your house. And so then it switched over to I was going to their house. Eventually, um, I clearly wasn't charging enough, so I learned like you can kind of learn that you're not charging enough if people are tipping you ridiculous amounts. Like if someone is tipping you as much as your service costs, that should like set off a little flag like, hey, you should probably charge more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the tips I was getting were just huge, and I was like, okay, clearly like they're seeing more value in this than I'm charging. Um, there was a lot of learning in like I kept knocking on doors and no one would be there. And I was like, okay. One girl was like, oh, my dog ate Play-Doh. Another one was like, oh my God, I thought it was tomorrow. So I say the business started January 1st, 2019, because Christmas Eve was like my busiest day. I had like 7 appointments, and like 3 of them I knocked on the door and it was no shows like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pay for Calendly. They're gonna book it online. They're gonna get reminders, and they are gonna pay upfront. And so then it was much smoother once I had a little booking system behind me. So then it was book at the link below in my bio instead of DM me for a booking. Um, so yeah, January 1st is when I say, okay, like this is a business. Um, I still was really into like the influencer thing, so I was kind of growing that at the same time of like partnering with brands and doing some local Buffalo stuff. Wasn't really sure that I wanted to have employees and have a big business. I didn't know what I wanted. Um, Fast forward to May of 2019, and I was hired to do another braid bar by another clothing boutique, half and half. And
Mm-hmm.
I put out my little wait list, my paper and pen, and the event started at 12 o'clock, and by 12:02, I looked at the list and I was like, whoa, guys, like, gonna have to cut the list off. That's definitely all the braids I'm going to be able to fit in. Half and half had hired me for like, I think 3 hours. So I was like, it's about 15 to 20 minutes of braid. And I was like, that's everyone. Um,
Wow.
and the owner of half and half was like, hey, one she could hop on and help you if that's okay. And I was like, okay, because like, what do I have to lose? My client that's paying me half and half is telling me, use this. So if she does a bad job, it doesn't really reflect on me. The client told me to use her. Her name was Jess, and she hopped on, and she just like, she knew all the braids. And then as far as the Braid Babe way, she just looked at what I was doing and copied it. I didn't even have to tell her. So I always say I accidentally hired my first employee. At the end of that event, I put a story on Instagram, and I literally did a poll saying, should we hire Jess? And I kind of looked at her and I was like, so do you want a job? And she was like, sure. And what was really cool is I kept telling her, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I've never even been a team lead or a manager in a position in my life. But if you want to stick through it with me, I'll keep figuring stuff out. And I told her I wouldn't know what to expect for bookings. I have no idea. But her calendar booked up immediately. And so she was on for like 2 weeks before we did more interviews. And then I hired Tori, that just walked in, actually was my second hire. So Tori was like June 1st of 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that escalated quickly, as they would say.
Yeah. And then Tori's actually filled up right away. And what we did is last year, we brought on contract braiders. So if we had multiple parties or multiple events, we could pull in these other braiders to work the event. So we didn't really have to say no to any bookings.
And so, was it mostly that when you say somebody's like calendar filled up, what did that constitute of? Was it braid bars? Were they going to events and doing a bunch on site? Were they individual appointments? Both? How does that work?
Yeah, it was a lot of both. Since it was summertime is really heavy for events and braid bars. But we also do parties and appointments. So they did have a lot. It was like a good mix of parties and appointments and braid bars.
Nice. And so,
Yeah.
where are you at now? Like, how many
So
people are working for you? And actually, also, I want to get into COVID because that had to have impacted you.
yeah. So I'll tell you where we're at right now, and then I can kind of tell you how that happened. So right now, there are 8 braiders in Buffalo, not including me. I am not braiding anymore. And 4 braiders in Rochester. And then we also have 4 contract braiders in Buffalo. Like I said, we don't like to say no to any booking. So we have our contract braiders. They know our menu braids really well, and so we'll pull them in to do an event. And then I have a client service rep and an intern.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I look. You also have some packages too. We can get into that in a second. Before you get into how COVID impacted your business, you said something that really stuck out at me. Right? You said I don't do any braids anymore, and the reason why I think that's important. First of all, it's interesting because here is this business that was conceived out of nowhere, based entirely on the fact that you love braiding and you're really freaking good at it. So now all of a sudden, to base your livelihood on you being completely removed from doing the actual activity, right? That supplies the business. Is interesting, especially how quickly that happened. But as any other like experienced business owner or entrepreneur can tell you, it's really important getting yourself out of the business to work on the business, and that's what you really need to do. And if you want that business to grow, to really enable that growth. Tell me about that process for you, how that went, and how it's going now. Was it
Yeah.
emotional? Like seriously, like was it hard?
It was stressful. I would say, June of 2019, I was really stressful. I I don't even, yeah, it was really stressful 2019 having employees, and not knowing what I was doing and having these people like being their leader. And then 2020, it was really stressful being out of it and just 100% trusting the braiders to just do really great. That was really hard, especially so many people wanted to book with me, and we just had to keep telling them like, sorry, Emily's off the calendar. She's working on the business. Sorry, Emily's off the calendar. That was definitely really hard. So that was stressful. It happened because during right when COVID ended, well, okay, COVID didn't end. Oh my gosh, I wish. When
Yeah, no
quarantine
kidding.
ended, so June 2nd, we reopened, and we opened up the calendar, and it was like new booking, new booking, new booking, new booking, and every single one was with me. And I actually had 4 brand new hires, which we can talk about when we talk about quarantine. And I was like, this is not going to work. Like, for one, I learned during quarantine how much I can build this business when I focus on the business side. And then for two, I had all these new hires that wanted hours, and if I'm getting every single booking and my calendar's just filled top to bottom with braids, I can't work on the business and my braiders aren't getting payroll. So um my schedule was open for like a day and a half after quarantine, and then we announced that I was off the calendar officially.
Good for you. I know that's hard, but ultimately, it's what you need to do for, as you said, work on the business, give your braiders hours, and keep them paid, and that's important.
I will say though, being out of the business does create its own challenges too, though. I used to have such a pulse on every part of the business because I would take appointments and I would observe everything. Like, almost having me for an appointment wasn't that fun because I was so serious, just observing everything about the appointment, everything the client said, and being able to change the business on what I was seeing. And now that I'm out of that, I really have to think of the best questions to ask the braiders. So Tori, that you just saw, she's our manager. She does one-on-ones every other week with the braiders, and we're constantly working on what questions she's asking them to kind of pull feedback from them. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? How can we improve? I really lost my pulse on that, and you have to like get creative on how to keep that going.
Yeah, yeah. I know a lot of businesses who maybe like after a specific, an action is completed, whether it be a customer support ticket or something, or service call or something like that, they maybe will fill out like a quick survey, right? Like, what did they do? What did they, almost like collecting it after every single one. Like, is there like a 3-question survey every braider could do to, like, I don't know. I'm not here to give you ideas, but you
No,
would.
that is an idea that another person that helps me, another mentor, came up with, and I do like it. We probably will implement that in the future. My goal is to have an app that's kind of similar to like Chipotle or Uber, where like the drivers are like taking a picture of it on your porch, and then you get that with a message saying, "Hey, it was delivered." Kind of like that, like, "Hey, you have your braid appointment. Here's a picture of your braid," and then the braider, checks a few things and then moves on. Definitely a big goal.
Yeah, yeah, you could totally do that. So tell me about how you've adjusted to the ugliness that is a pandemic and quarantine and everything like that.
Yeah, so when quarantine hit, it definitely was emotionally and mentally really hard. Going from Braid Babes, we were growing before quarantine and being so busy to just, silent, like my phone's not buzzing anymore, and we don't have bookings flying in, and I don't know when we're going to be able to reopen. I don't know if we're going to make it through money wise. We also collect payments on future bookings, so we also were being bombarded with refunds, which is totally fair. Everyone wants their money back, and that was really hard. We gave like probably $10,000 in refunds, so it was like we're being hit. We have no money coming in. Plus now it's like refund. um we were like begging people to reschedule. We were like, hey, if you reschedule, we'll give you a free appointment instead of wanting a refund. We did get a lot of people to accept reschedules. Once I got past all the shock of it, then I was like, I kind of came up with this cool way to look at it. Have you ever just thought like, oh my gosh, I have so much work to do. I could just sit here and work for 2 weeks, and then maybe I'll be caught up and just pause the world.
All the
I
time.
used to, yeah, I always had that thought. And so once I was like, okay, this is literally what I've been asking for. The world is paused for 2 months. I didn't know it was going to be 2 months, but the world's paused for 2 months and I can work on whatever project I want to. And so I did 2 big projects. One was I created a Facebook community, a Facebook group called I'm a Braid Babe. And in there, we just started all supporting each other, talking you want. Have you ever had shimmers? Some people would say the shimmers in their hair were the only thing keeping them like happy during quarantine. You can see like I have a shimmer in my hair here that's been shining
Hmm.
like this whole time.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Gives
noticed
like
it.
these sparkle strands in your hair. Um, yeah. Uh, and then so that community is we use it to shout out our monthly subscribers. We call them Braid Babes. They get appointments every month. So we kind of create this FOMO effect in the group, and constantly like we'll post the braids we did, we'll shout out the monthly members, and so we have a lot of sales come right out of the Facebook group. The other thing I did was I did a virtual boot camp. We were supposed to have an in-person boot camp the weekend before everything shut down, the weekend after everything shut down. And so I brought all of the braiders through a virtual boot camp. And so that's how I had 4 new hires fully trained the day that we turned the system back on. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring to see how many people and businesses got creative to stay engaged with the people that they serve. And I think that's the important part of it, because when physical proximity and then ultimately like business transactions have to be suspended, what's left, right? And I think immediately everybody becomes grounded and realize at the end of the day, like there are people we serve. We're trying to foster a community, and fortunately, does not not to make light of all of the sacrifices and hardships that people face. But fortunately, I think it's never been easier to kind of stay connected while being physically apart. And I think we've seen a lot of businesses, like I have a friend who runs a video production studio, and he created something called like a video creator network. And so what he does is he has a weekly meeting with people who talk about the types of video that they're creating, business owners, marketing people, right? Share ideas. He actually just invited me to present to that in a couple of weeks to talk about my podcast, which I started, during all of this as well. And, you know what I mean? And so, hey, what camera did you use? What editing, like, things like that. And, it's really helped his business, during a time. Now, obviously he can, but for a time he couldn't go on site to shoot video, right? And that's before, that's all he was. It was like either come to our studio or we'll go on location and we'll produce a video. So it's just really cool to see all of the creativity that's come out of that. And now, obviously, like, things aren't opened all of the way up, economically speaking, but you can get back out and you can have your appointments. Now you have this thing, and this thing doesn't have to go away, and this thing could constantly serve you and your community, and help you from probably a marketing perspective as well, I would think.
Yep, it does a lot. That group's a lot of fun for us, actually. I went live in it earlier today, so I love like keeping it alive and going. It's awesome.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who was in your position 3 years ago, who maybe has, is trying to figure out what they want to do or pursue a passion or something like that?
Yeah, I think the 2 biggest things, if you don't know what your passion is or what you would do, one, getting coffee with people like I did with you. Just find people that seem to be doing in life what you want to do. They're in a position in life that you think you want to be in. Get coffees with them, get really real with them. And you may find that you definitely do want that, or you may find you don't want that. Like, I had meetings with people in marketing and I realized, like, man, I don't think I actually do want to, get into marketing and get into that whole agency world. And then the second thing is, really, if you don't know your passion yet, just start exploring. Like, I actually was doing a lot of other things at the same time. I went paddle boarding, I was going rollerblading, I started shuffle dancing. So it was like,
what's shuffle dancing?
It's like the Running Man. That's like the basics of the shuffle.
Okay.
Is the Running Man. It's like you're hopping on your feet. Yeah. So just like try some new hobbies, get out there and try new things. I think those are my number 1 and number 2 things.
Put yourself out there, meet some people, and try new things. I like it. I used to do that too. I reached out to people for coffee meetings a lot. Most of the time is because very early in my career, I was in like predominantly sales and business development roles. So that was just part of it. But then I also learned about networking, and I did some of that and reached out to a lot of people who were doing things that I admired, and a lot of people never got back to me, quite frankly. But for you, like, I immediately identified and respected your hustle. Like, you're like, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm trying to figure it out. This is what I want, right? Like
Right, right.
there were you didn't know exactly what it was, but you knew what you wanted, and you
Yeah.
weren't afraid to ask for it. And I think people are attracted to that kind of, I don't know if it's motivation, self propulsion, or whatever it is, but like somebody who just feels like, no, this is who I am and this is where I'm going. I think people like get attracted to that and they admire that and they want to follow that. So like I immediately wanted to figure out how I could help you, and I didn't even know how I could. And I mean, maybe all I did was introduce you to Lauren, who's more qualified to help you than me. But the point being is that like I was on board. I was like, all right, I'm on Team Emily. Like I want to see her go do whatever it is, and however I can help, I can do that. And I think that's probably why you found it easy to add people to your team, because they like, without have, as you said, look, I've never led a team before. I don't know what I'm doing. But
Yeah.
if you want to join, like, I'll do my best. We'll figure it out. I'll be like all of those things. It's just, it's so important. And I think that in a world where it's so easy to pose and kind of fake things, especially in social media, I think people are starving for realism. And that was probably refreshing. I have no doubt that probably served you well as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it did. I try to be really real. Like my Instagram is not all flowers. Like my last few posts were actually like, oh, going through some hard times. Like business can also get really hard, really taxing. Honestly, we're going through this like level up phase at Braid Babes right now, and it's kind of painful. Like for one, I just had to switch accountants, which sounds really simple, but like my prior accountant was with me from day one and gave me all kinds of breaks and just helped me so much. And like we were braiding his wife and like it, so business can get really, really hard at the same time. So I
I
do like
struggle
to
with that
try.
too. I'm an emotional person, and I
Yeah.
struggle with those things as well.
Yeah. And so I do try to like keep it real too and tell people like I am struggling and here's where I struggle. Sometimes I'll just be super honest.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel that too, and I go back and forth because about, like, for example, should I share that stuff on social media? Because on one hand, I like the idea of being just really transparent, but I also don't want to. And I'm not accusing you of this, but this is what goes through in my mind. Like, oh, should I share something like this? Because I'm really sensitive to people who I feel like are wallowing, and I'm also really sensitive to people who I feel like are putting on a little too much, right? And
Right,
are
right,
just
right.
getting a little too high on their own supply. And so like I kind of try and stay grounded, and I don't really have an incredibly active social media presence. And quite honestly, that's one thing I'm still figuring out. Even as running a marketing agency, like I would say, social media, organic social media, is one of the things, compared to people who do it well, is least intuitive to me in the whole marketing ecosystem. So maybe I should be following more people like you and kind of figuring out how what I want my voice to be. Because right now, quite honestly, I just post videos talking about different services and things like that, and articles. I just take the content that I produce that serves me well for like getting ranked on Google and sharing with like clients and prospects, emailing it.
Right.
It works well there, but like if that's all I do on social media, my presence is probably a little bit bland. So I need to figure out a way to.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually wouldn't go off mine so much right now because I was doing really well when I was braiding. And I was, almost like a braid influencer. And now that I'm not braiding, it's my page has switched a little more to business and which I think is fine. I'm quickly losing followers though. Like last week I lost 40 followers. I'm okay with it, because my page is changing. It makes sense that some people are gonna be like, well, I don't care. She's not posting braids anymore. But I'm like trying to find my new like business owner voice.
Well,
It's
so
a
would
little
you
bit different
still
than
be an
that.
influencer though? Would you still be an
Yeah,
influencer, just
maybe.
not the person who does the braiding?
Yeah, maybe a little different. I don't have time to actually like do the whole influencer thing right now. My page is kind of on the back seat and all my focus goes to Braid Babes. But maybe yeah, down the road it'd be more of like a business focus, like when yeah, I'm kind of making that switch. I'm not that fun, cute little like look at this cute little braid. There's not that much of that anymore.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because over the weekend, there was like a really small clothing company that I never heard of that commented on one of my Instagram posts. I took a selfie with my son at the park. There was like fall colors in the background. And it had been posted for at least a week or so. And they posted on it. They were like, I forget what they said, but they're like, DM us to collab. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I texted my siblings. I was like, does this make me an influencer now? Because I am like the furthest thing from a social media influencer. But I've noticed like that's like the pitch, right? In influencer world, it's like, hey, let's collab, you know?
Yep.
So I thought that was really funny. I don't
I
think
love
that's
that.
going to make me an influencer in any capacity, but I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm really excited to share this. Before we break, anything else that you would like to talk about or mention to anybody who's watching or listening?
Um, I don't think so. I think my number one thing I usually like to say is like reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram right now it changes a lot, but it's MEBEMMYBEE. Like if you do have you want to do business or you want to get out of your full-time job, and you're like feeling lost or even sad, I always just tell people like just DM me because I'm always on Instagram. So
Cool. Yeah. Well, I'll definitely like share your website and your social media handles and things like that, and point people in your direction. Emmily Bowman, your story is awesome. Your business is awesome. I really enjoy knowing you, and I wish you nothing but continued success. Thanks for being the first official guest of the Fling, and maybe we can do this again someday.
yeah, totally. Thank you, CJ. And I'm sure I'll be bumping into you, if even virtually soon. So
That's
we always
right.
do.
Cool. All right. Have a great day. See ya.